Class 7 is going to be all specific to mastering for CD. So in this class, we're really going to focus on the whole process of putting together a CD, right? And so here we can actually go through the step-by-step process that I was kind of defining earlier, right? And let's see here, I can actually go over to Waveburner, and can kind of knock away some of the plugins. So here what we have is a CD that I mastered, and it has 1, 2, whatever, 10 songs or something like that, 10 songs. And so part of the process of mastering the CD is setting the song order. You could see that I trimmed the tails, right, the heads and the tails, right? So we got fade-ins and fade-outs, right, on the mixes here, right? Some kind of very subtle ones in the beginning, very short ones, right? The tops and tails are edited. I have spacing between the songs, right? I need to define that, and how much space do I want between each song, right? So as I'm working with the individual songs, I got the order. I can apply, I can also add in some other information, right? Fade-ins and fade-outs, exactly, right? At the beginnings and the ends, right? And then what I have is my file names here. When I work with the individual CD tracks, I can actually give them their physical names. I can place in ISRC codes, right, for that information. There's like a whole other section here that allows me to put in my mastering notes, right? What studio it was done in, who the engineer was, what the source media is, what date was it done, information about the client, right? Copyright information. I could put in my own comments. The CD text, so this is what will show up on CD players that display CD text, right? That's the information that gets displayed there. There's other information that can be added in here, which is the UPC, right? EAN codes, right? That information can be added in, so you can see the ISRC codes here. And then let's just go back here, right? So if I go back to the album, I also have the album title, right? And it's done slightly differently in different applications. This is what's called PQ data, right? So as I do all my edits and my spacings, the PQ data is storing all of the information about where each song is located on the disc, how much space between, how long is each song, etc. So when you put it in a player, you can actually have a countdown. It tells you how long the song is, right? How much time is left in the song, how far you are into the song, etc. What track number it is. All this information gets stored and set up in the mastering process, right? So we have basically like two we have two basic IDs, right? So we have like let's see if I can skip over to here, right? So you have kind of like a start ID, right? So when I actually click on the track, the actual playback start point, which could be in the middle of a song, right? You have like sometimes you have a song starting in the middle of another song, right? The songs could also overlap each other, right? So in other words, I could drag this over and they could crossfade over each other, right? And then where do I place the IDs there? And this is like a pre-roll, right, for that, so that you don't get clipping when the song starts, right? So the PQ data, basically audio, right, for a CD, and an audio on a CD actually has 9 data streams, right? So let's just undo that there for a second. 9 data streams. And so this is just on a compact disc. So one is your audio, right? That's your stereo audio signal, right? So you have your left-right audio signal. That's one data stream. And then you have 8 what are called subcodes. And so these 8 subcodes, of all of them, right, for the CD is actually contains not just audio but graphic information, right? So the actual Red Book format that makes up a standard compact disc is a CD plus G. So you can actually store graphic information, right? And so the 2 channels, the P and the Q channels, right? And I forget where it starts. I think it goes P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W or something, right? So, all right, so R through W is the remaining channel, and this is where graphic information is placed. And many players just ignore it at this point, but it still has to be burned into the CD. The PQ data, the P channel contains all the start and end times and song order and all of that stuff, right? That's where all that data. The Q channel contains all the CD text, the ISRC codes, all of the other information about the disk, right? So these are data channels that are in there that you would never know about, right? But when you put in the disk and you see the song title, that's the information. That's where it's stored, right? So it's kind of like metadata, right? So like, it's not a whole lot different really than, if you take an MP3 file, it has a graphic picture file, right? So you could see the cover, right, of the song, right, or whatever artwork for that particular song. And there's information about the style of music, right, the artist, the composer, right, the song title, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If it's part of an album, what album is it from, right? The ISRC codes, all that stuff can be stored in there, right? All that stuff. And this is just like a way of organizing it in particular for the compact disc creation. So this is a big part of the process, right? So when you're working and you're creating a CD, you're actually putting in those ISRC, UPC codes, you're getting the CD text exactly the way it is. The ISRC code is the International Standard Recording Code. So for those of you guys who actually release your own music, when you release it out onto the internet, through, or you sell it through whatever medium, if you sell it through iTunes or CD Baby or whatever release technology, you sell it through your own website, however you sell it. If you sell it through another vendor, then you can track sales by getting ISRC codes, right? So the ISRC codes, you have to get them from an assigned ISRC manager. So when I do mastering work, I give away ISRC codes. So I'm an ISRC manager, right? And through my website, you can actually purchase codes, right? You can get codes directly from me. And what these codes do, they get registered with the RIAA here in the United States. And it's part of an international organization. And what they do is each code is unique to each song. And not just each song, but each version of each song. So if you have like 3 different mixes of a song, right, then each one of those mixes will get a different code. And that way they can be tracked. So the playback on radio stations can be tracked. The playback on the radio, on the internet, can be tracked. And the sales can actually be tracked. And you do this through a company called SoundScan, right, that does all the Nielsen ratings, right, for television and stuff like that. And so if you create an account with SoundScan, they will actually actively search out all the sales and playbacks, and you get a report, right? And so you can actually get a report of how often your song is sold, how often it's been played, where it's been played, etc. Right? So you get all these detailed reports, and this gives you an idea of like tracking where your music is going, right? So, and this code is actually burned into the metadata of the file, so that it can be traced, right? And that's the basic way that works. Now, the UPC EAN codes deal more with actual physical sales, right? And so those are the scan bars that go on. So EAN is for the European version, right? Yeah, it's all for tracking purposes, right? So this is something that if you have a production company or where you're releasing lots of music, or even if you're just releasing your own music, you can put all that data in there, and then you can track it. And so that's just stuff that a lot of if you buy into some of these companies, they supply the codes automatically. Some charge you extra for it. You can actually buy your own codes or become an ISRC manager, but you have to pay an annual fee, right, for the right to do that. And it may not be worth it if you just, you may get like 100,000 codes or 50,000 codes, and what are you going to do with that? You're going to write 50,000 songs in a year? That would be ridiculous, right? So, it may not be worth the money right at the time, so you could just get them as you need them, right? So anyway, so all of that stuff gets burned in, and in the end, right, the next step in the process of creating a CD is all about creating what's called the glass master and getting the CD actually duplicated. And primarily, there are a couple different formats. One of the ones that I like to use most is the DDP format. It's a disk description protocol. And what I like about it is that it's the most accurate in terms of the actual file. So it's actually a data file or a series of data files that contains all the information, not just the audio, but all of the CD text and ISRC codes and all the other metadata in there in a separate file, or it's like in a folder. And when this is loaded up, they can actually burn what's called the glass master to create the disks. Now, unlike the disk that you burn in your computer, right? When you burn a disk in your computer, it's an optical thing, right? So, but actually, if you go to a compact disk, right, and I'll show you what a glass master looks like here. Like, actually, a CD itself, right, has layers to it, right? So there's a series of different layers. So you have like the protective covering, okay. You have the which is actually the thickest part of the disc. So when you look at the side of a CD, and it's that thick, right? That much of it is this first layer here, right? And then the next layer is the reflected side, right? That's the reflected thing. So it's usually like nickel or something like that. So it's very reflective, right? So it's polished, right? Then you have a thin plastic layer above that, very thin, and then you have the artwork, which is printed on top. Okay? So what's interesting is that the thickest, most protected part of the CD is the side it has the reflected side on. And so knowing this, if you put a CD down, you should always put it with the reflective side down on a table or down on a surface. And most people put them upside down with the printed artwork flat on the table. But actually, if you scratch that surface of the disc, you're more likely to damage the disc scratching it from the artwork side than you are from the bottom, because that's the much thinner layer, right? So it's all very backwards, right? So the disk description protocol, right? So that's the file type. So what happens is that this file gets sent to a manufacturing plant, and they create what's called a glass master, right? So this disk, which is like about an 8-inch disc, right, is actually a physically layered thing. So actually, when you do it, what you have are these pits and lands that are created that represent the ones and zeros, right? And so what happens is when the lens, right, or the laser flashes off the surface of the disc, right? So you have a laser that flashes a beam of light off the disc, and then it goes into a lens, right, which then reads that amount of brightness. If it comes in full bright, then that is considered a 0, right, or a 1. I can't remember which one. But when the laser hits an edge, right, when it hits this edge, half the light gets dispersed off this way and half gets lit up. So now we have a half bright hitting the lens, and that would be a 1, right? So essentially what we have is this binary thing here. So if the light even hits here, part of it reflects up and the part just goes straight down and disappears. So it's an actual physical thing. It's microscopic, right? And there's billions of them, literally, right, on thousands and thousands of tracks. But you have all these physical things, these little areas that go up and down. And so what happens is it's binary, exactly, binary ones and zeros. So what they do is on the glass plate, they actually print. And actually, this is the output. This is not the glass master. I think I have a glass master here. That's a glass master right there. So what they do is they actually put this film on the glass disc, and the film actually gets cut away by a laser, and then they clean it, and they use that to create a mold, right, or a positive impression that they can use. And so what they do is they basically put this impression into the plastic, and then they electroplate that plastic so it has that nickel plating over the top of it, which gives it the brightness, right, or the reflectivity. And so that reflectivity then is what the laser reflects off of, right? That's the reflective part of the surface. But actually the imprint, the binary, is printed into the plastic. It's stamped into the plastic, right? And then that plastic with all those indentations is then electroplated, right? And then they put the top layer of the plastic and the artwork on it, right? And so what you saw in the other picture is it I did the wrong one. There we go. Right, is this, right? And this is showing you the whole the final product, I believe. And I could be wrong about this. It could be the glass master. Looks like there's 2 of them there or something, or maybe that's the way that they do it, that they process it. Yeah, so it's kind of cool, right? It's kind of a trippy thing that you probably never would have thought about, right? And in terms of the actual the way that it's manufactured. So unlike and let's see if I can find which layer I actually put this information on here. Unlike the way that CDs I mean, that vinyl discs are made, or actually it's more similar to the way vinyl discs are made, is just have grooves in them, right? So it's actually more closely related to that. But unlike the process of optical, which is what your computer does, all that does is that you have a film or a layer of something, photoelectric material that's on the disc, and then when the laser prints in, it discolors it, right? So you have different color variations right across the disc on a track, and those color variations end up amounting to the same binary stream of ones and zeros, right? Same basic idea, right? Anyway, that's very different, and it's less accurate actually. So when you burn a disc, when you burn physical discs, and the burners, the CD burners that they have in mastering studios can be very expensive, right, for the most accurate ones. And even the most accurate ones, right, with the highest quality discs, right, and you're always using like gold discs, right, for burning and stuff, for master stuff, you will still have errors, right? You'll still have errors on every single, all the way across the disc. And they just have a threshold, right, what they call a block error rate, blur, right? And if the block error rate is above a certain number, then the disk is considered no good. And if it's below, if it meets the specifications of a red book, then it's good. And that's your master. And then your duplication is being created off of that, right? So when you get CDs duplicated, you should never send a CDR, right? You should always send a DDP file, right? So if that means that you need to, get mastering software or have it mastered by somebody, it's really worth it, because the DDP is exact. It's just a data file, right? So there is no error. There can't be an error. And then when they manufacture the disk, right, they can compare it up to the DDP to see what the exact error count is. Sometimes I'll also send a gold CDR along with the DDP file, and that way they can cross-reference them, right? And so that's a really big part of the mastering process. And so the whole idea there is that in the end, you want to make that final disc as accurate and as close to what you spent all your time and energy working on as possible, right? You want to make it as close to the original sound as possible. And it will vary, right? It will lose some quality, right? There's no way around it. The one problem that some people have with DDP is that it allows them to burn the glass master at a higher rate. And ideally, you want them to burn it at a 1 times speed. And, they could burn it, like at an 8 times speed or faster. And some people think that makes them less accurate. I still have always gotten better results from DDP than from CDR, right? So that's the basic deal there. All right. And then, there's one other thing, which is, that also gets submitted with the mastering, which is documentation, right? So there's documentation. Like, so this is just like a simple document that defines, like, the basic information about the disc, the titles, the start and the end, the length, the pause, right, prior to it, the ISRC code, etc., right? So you have all of this information that's part of, that gets sent along with the master to the manufacturing plant. So when they look at it, they can compare what it is that you've done to what your file says and make sure that it's validated. Because if they don't match up, then they'll say, hey, which one is right? Did you send me the wrong PDF file, mastering documentation, or did you send me the wrong DDP file, right? So that's like a way of verifying it, right? So that's class 7, mastering for the CD.